Awesome. Good to see all of you. Thank you for making the trip to London and to Hatfield. So super excited. First, I want to give each of you the opportunity to just introduce yourself, say a few words about the company and why you guys choose to support Avalanche L1s as part of your product offering. So Anthony, why don't you start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning, and maybe G Maple for those who are playing MapleStory. My name is Anthony Janocko. I'm a senior Web3 solutions architect with Avacloud. And for those of you who don't know, Avacloud is the premier blockchain as a managed service provider for launching Avalanche L1s. We have three core main tenants. One, which would be our managed infrastructure. You can think of that as what you need to launch your L1. We make that really easy through our no-code portal. We also have features and tooling that we build on top of that to make it more of a one-stop shop for launching your application. And finally, we have our client services team, of which I'm a part of, where we work with all of our different teams and clients and ensure their success. I think the concept of Avacloud actually came from this need of, Avalanche has this great tech. They had this concept of formerly known as subnets. They were a little bit difficult to launch, and really, how can we make that easier? How can we make that faster? And that's where Avacloud came in. So designed from the start to support Avalanche L1s, and we've seen a lot of success since then. So.
Awesome, thank you. Hilmar, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Hilmar, one of the founders of Gelato. Gelato, we call ourselves Web3's cloud platform, and blockchain as a service is a key pillar of this. We have roughly 50 chains in production. We came actually originally from more the roll-up space, now recently added support for Avalanche. You might have heard about chains such as Kraken's, InkChain, we got a chain with Fox News, Lisk, a former L2 migrated to our platform, and we are about to launch a bunch of really exciting Avalanche L1s in the future. What we do is not only blockchain as a service, we have an end-to-end platform. We have a really amazing smart wallet SDK that really tries to solve the UX layer, from embedded wallets to account abstraction to paymasters and bundlers. We have, of course, blockchain as a service with Avalanche L1s. And then also an interoperability solution if you want to bridge assets, not only inside the Avalanche ecosystem, but beyond that. We can work together with you to figure this out. So really trying to think from an application-first mindset and then what infrastructure is necessary. And yeah, excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Ravi. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Zeeve. We have been into Web3 automation and infrastructure as a service for almost 4 years now. Started our journey with helping enterprises navigate blockchain tech with some of the permission protocols like Fabric, Besu, R3 Coda. But then we saw massive traction happening in the crypto native space and started offering app chains, with different stacks. But yeah, we have been working with subnets for almost 2 years now, have some enterprise customers as well as crypto native customers. But now with the new avatar L1, I think we are super, super excited. And it's a full-scale Web3 automation, whether launching your L1 to scaling with 60 plus integrations and good number of customer support. So I think it has been an exciting journey so far.
Amazing. Awesome, thank you everyone. So I think the first thing I want to touch on is, I want to understand a little bit when you guys work with projects, right? Like the L1 stack is, I'd say, very different from the other stacks we see in the whole industry, especially the layer 2 stacks. So especially looking at the compliance part or the economic side of it. So I'd love to hear from each of you, like what factors are driving projects towards L1s to choose it for their projects? What are these unique requirements they have, especially when thinking about enterprise use cases, gaming use cases, DeFi use cases, and why are they making the choice to do? So Anthony, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah, I can start. So I think, just as you said, you're talking about different use cases. And each of those use cases, whether it's gaming, that's going to have a specific profile of what they're looking for. Probably high throughput to support a lot of microtransactions. They're looking for maybe a Web2 seamless experience for their users, so they're going to need some type of tooling on top of that. And then they're going to need a native token, right, to power that and potentially create some sort of game economics, things like that. So that's very different from a financial use case where you would need essentially a private network to meet regulatory compliance. You're going to have some sort of KYB, KYC enabled in order to ensure that the users of that are going to be compliant as well, et cetera. So when we see enterprises and applications come to the L1 stack, they are really attracted to that customizability. So depending on their use case, they can choose the controls and the parameters that they need to actually create their bespoke L1 to cater to those criteria that will make their business successful. So I'm thinking of Nexon as an example. They just went live with their MapleStory universe last week, had their mainnet launch for their actual game. This, of course, is a 20-year franchise with over 250 million users. And they were on a previous chain before and decided to move to an Avalanche L1 primarily for those reasons, right? So they could have their own network. They're not competing with block space with anyone else. They can achieve that scalability that they need to support all those users that they're going to be onboarding, and with the speed of the Avalanche tech as well. So that's kind of one plus there. They have the ability to kind of set up their own tokenomics, and then that also launched and has been successful over the past week, I guess, which is really exciting. But yeah, they actually launched with Avacloud. The reason for that being that they were really attracted to our reliability and our SLAs from an enterprise perspective. So they have a really strict development process, and they were able to spin up their test environments very quickly in order to adhere to that software development lifecycle. And so they really found the Avacloud kind of spinning up test nets in under 20 minutes, mainnets under 30 minutes, being able to do walkthroughs, audits, et cetera, on the platform was really attractive to them. And so that was kind of a key driver for them launching with Avacloud. But overall, it was really the L1 stack that made them kind of move over to Avalanche and have their successful launch. So that was about 2 years in the making, really exciting. And yeah, looking forward to seeing where that goes.
So Gelato just recently announced actually support for Avalanche L1s. So would be super excited to hear, I guess, like for a provider like you guys, it's a huge commitment to actually support a new stack. There's a lot of work going in. It takes engineering resources. So would love to learn a little bit like why you guys are thinking it's a good addition to your portfolio.
For sure, yeah. And maybe as context, so Gelato supports 4 stacks. We support OP-Stack, Arbitrum Orbit, ABC, and now Avalanche L1s. And there are like actually 3 concrete reasons why we went into supporting Avalanche and why we are really excited about the stack. So first of all, I think control over cost is something that we realized with some of our L2 users, which is a topic which is a little bit out of your control if you have an L2. For example, we had Lisk, who was used to be an L1 themselves. They sort of custom built it at some point, then migrated to an OP-Stack L2, and suddenly a blob space on Ethereum really heated up, and suddenly there was like 90% utilization, and the cost to actually submit these batches to Ethereum were extremely high, and suddenly transaction fees were like 10 cents or something again, right? So something that they try to avoid from actually moving from the L1 to an L2 in the first place. And so you have less control over like your cost base because you have that very strong dependency on another base layer. And if you want more fine-grained control over there, I think an L1 makes a ton of sense. Then it's also just less dependency from a technological point of view. So bandwidth on like a DA layer, if you have an L2, for example, is one restriction, but this L1 is constantly upgrading, and you have to kind of like maintain compatibility with it, and sometimes stuff breaks. So if Ethereum updates testnets, we suddenly realize on testnets from our customers that sometimes stuff breaks and the chain potentially has downtime. And so you always have that dependency on this other layer 1 that you have to manage, right? It's not impossible, but you have to manage. It creates additional overhead. And then I think something which is very interesting that we discovered, especially from our enterprise customers, such as Kraken, for example, or Fox, right, that we help run their blockchain, is that they were really interested in compliance. So they came to us and said, like, hey guys, we need OFAC compliance in our chain. We have to filter out certain transactions. And these sort of L2 stacks, they were designed more with this fully sort of permissionless decentralization mindset where you can always force include transactions. This is a bit technical now, but you can force include transactions from the base layer without needing to go through the sequencer. So this sort of decentralization permissionlessness is exactly the opposite of like compliance, right? And so it's really difficult to actually make them 100% compliant in a certain way. And if this is a requirement for you, then an L1 is sort of like the only solution where this kind of like, where the stack is actually purpose-built to start permission it. Maybe you want to be permissionless at some point, but then you can still sort of like develop into that, right? So I think this gradual development is what attracted us to the stack, and then we actually went to it and said, hey, I think this is really valuable for enterprises, and so we started reading more into it, and now, of course, supporting it.
Amazing. Thank you very much. So Ravi, yeah, I would also love to learn, like, with all the clients that you work with, right? Like, what are the key drivers, and what do you think, especially like the the ones that maybe have like a very high throughput also?
Yeah, so I think the drivers have been quite diverse, depending on customer, because we cover both crypto native as well as the enterprise customers. So, like for example, binary holding, which has been running on OP Stack, have got millions of transactions, and they are into telecom space. So for them, I think throughput was a massive requirement. In addition to that, with sudden changes in OP Stack not supporting the native gas token, I think was another motivation for them to go for L1, where they can have their custom gas token as well as custom staking, etc. And then we have, for example, Turf, which is into gaming space and building on-demand data and analytics. For them, again, throughput was a massive requirement because they are doing a lot of data generation and data analytics and data storage. So they wanted to have something which is cost effective at the same time provide necessary throughput. Then we have CodeNeg, which is into automotive. For them, compliances was a massive requirement because they are getting data from all the vehicles. So high throughput, at the same time, compliance of data, because and then the data is being shared with some of the enterprise partners like insurance, etc. So compliance was a massive requirement. Same goes for Siemens Energy. They are running a POA, a closed consortium kind of use case, where the permissioned nature of L1. So I think it's a gamut, from permissionless to permission, and then somewhere in between, all kind of configurations. And we have customers we have seen, realizing massive benefits out of the different features of L1.
Yeah, amazing. I think I'd like to touch on one point you mentioned, right? Like, so the custom gas token, right? Like that is, I think, a huge driver for many teams. And for a little bit of context, right? Like every chain is usually also an economy, right? Like where users pay for transaction fees. Obviously, many chains want to make that as cheap as possible, and potentially there's also a validator set involved, right? Like so, they are like incentives, and they need to be aligned. So. What do you think is kind of like the key driver? Why do projects want their own gas token? Why do they really feel like that's important to them?
So depends on the use case. Like if you're launching a permissionless chain and you want to build a community, you want to have token economics in such a way so that whatever value is being generated at the network level can be captured within the network and for the benefit of the community. So those are the use cases which tend to use their own custom gas token. But then there are a lot of private use cases, I would say more of permission use cases, where they in fact have completely gasless, so with native account abstraction, like in the case of Siemens or Remedy or within healthcare and enterprise space, they do not require any custom gas token. Some even permissionless use cases also we have seen where they just want a stable coin can be used, or AVAX can be used, or ETH can be used. So it depends on the use case. But yeah, in the case of permissionless use cases, we are seeing a lot of people want to have their own custom gas token.
Amazing, yeah. And Hilmar, you touched already on compliance, right? Like, and especially the permissioning, which can be very, very challenging on other stacks, maybe. So, can you explain a little bit more, like maybe a concrete example of where that is necessary and how it could be implemented with L1s and how this kind of like requirement can be solved?
Yeah, so enterprise use cases are the predominant ones that really require that, because usually we see sort of like a pattern here where, like I firmly believe that the more sort of permissionless you make something, the more useful it actually becomes for you also as like an enterprise or corporate, because the real cool thing is actually just like having liquidity and users pour into your chain and you'll be able to sell them your financial services, right? So this is where the real flywheel, I think, beyond just maybe cost optimizations come from. So you want to get there, but at the beginning, you might want to start in a more isolated environment, right? And isolation means that you might want to restrict who can actually transact on your chain. You might want to have certain IP addresses whitelisted. If you then make it more public, then you want to make sure it complies with your compliance department, right? What we did with Kraken, for example. Okay, we somehow need to make it OFAC compliant. Avalanche offers a bunch of really amazing native tools here to do that. We also have certain services around it that we can add as modules to it. So there are a lot of different ways how we can design it. It is pretty custom for the customer's requirements. But yeah, I think it is extremely important to have this ability to create this compliance functionality set, and then later, I think, open it up to the public, and then be, if you have maybe not a proof of authority mechanism, but maybe proof of stake mechanism where everyone can participate, to have a truly decentralized permissionless system. I think this should be probably the evolution for most chains, except like maybe a few. But yeah, this sort of functionality set that Avalanche L1s provide is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what we see a lot, right? Like that's evolution. Most of the L1s start maybe more permissioned, more with a permission validator set. I think we saw one interesting transition where the validator set is partially permissioned and then also opened up to the community, and the community can stake. There's a certain stake rate reserved for a core validator set that ensures stable operation, and then kind of like it's slowly shifted over. So it's definitely an interesting mix. I think the last thing that I'd like to touch on is especially these high throughput chains,
Sure.
right? Like, so how does an L1 kind of like really give them the opportunity to offer, you know, like a lot of block space at a very attractive price to their customers, or as we heard, even gasless, right?
Yeah, so I think, you know, it's exactly that. So when you're running an Avalanche L1, you know, one, it's EVM compatible. Two, it has native interoperability, so you're still having access to the Avalanche C chain and other networks itself, which is really powerful. But in terms of throughput, because you're running your own sovereign chain, the transactions that, you know, the validators are processing are really only those that are related to your business and your use case. So you're able to achieve a much higher throughput without having competition from other competing projects built on a shared chain, for example. And then you can, you know, as Corey mentioned in the previous talk, there's a lot of optimizations coming out within the Avalanche roadmap, and I think those, once they get incorporated into the Avalanche L1s, we'll see even higher throughputs and things like that to support even more aggressive requirements for different applications, whether it's financial trading or gaming or anything like that. So we're excited to support those as Avacloud as they come.
Amazing.
Out.
Thank you very much. I want to thank each of you. If you now look at these three providers here and you can't even choose, right? Like you fell in love with all of them. I got good news for you. Avalanche L1s have an architecture that actually allows leveraging multiple of these providers, right? So this is much more difficult with other stacks, but you know, like with an Avalanche L1, you can definitely have a validator set that is maybe not run by one provider, maybe it's run by 2, 3, maybe it's also run by yourself, and you leverage them for a stable core validator set. And then in addition, many servers we already heard, smart wallet SDKs, explorers, indexers, right? Like there's a lot more than just a validator set you need to run your L1. So super excited. I want to thank each of you that you made the trip out here. So in the next hour here, you will hear a deep dive of each of the projects. We will get started with Hilmar for Gelato, and then you will learn a little bit more about each providers and each of the features.